Okay, here we are. This is our third talk about questions and discussions and topics that deals with a very important issue, which is formally what is true and what is false, what we can trust and what is a fake. And to answer or to try to have some more experience about this issue, we invited 4 artists, and Victoria Lomasko is one of them, and 4 journalists who are somehow involved and have a special interest in the topics. And thank you, Leonardo Bianchi, for being with us. This is series of speeches which are promoted by Polo del Novecento, Fondazione Verano Celtini, Istituto di Studi Gaetano Salvemini, and our speech today, our conversation will be around the topic of conspiracy and theories of conspiracies. So that's why we started with Victoria and Lomasko, who is an artist from Russia, an artist, a reporter, and graphic reporter, and special witness of what is happening in Russia in the last few decades. I know her work from other languages, but now I'm very happy to say that next month Other Russias will be translated in Italian by Becco Giallo, and so we will have the great opportunity to read her reportage in black and white about what is happening among common people in Russia. And hopefully also another important book, The Last Soviet Artist, will be translated in Italian, but let's keep it secret for the moment. And also Victoria will be in Italy in November for an important exhibition in Museo di Santa Giulia in Brescia, and the title of the exhibition will be as well The Last Soviet Artist, which is you, Victoria. Why did you choose this name, and tell us something more about your work and your experience as artist and as reporter? Thank you.
Thank you, Elettra. I'm named myself the last Soviet artist because it's the true. I'm from the last Soviet generation who really remember how it was. I was the last pioneer, and my father is an artist too. He was working as an artist decorator and was worked on communist propaganda. He hated communist ideology, but he was working for income, and it was my childhood. Among his working folders with hundreds Lenin, and it wasn't nice and light childhood. But anyway, it's my experience. And if I am an artist who is working with documental topics, of course, I must present this experience, work with this, reflect this experience. And also, I received my art education in Moscow, in the state of print art, and all professors were very old. And it was a very Soviet education. I cannot say that it was only black. And of course, it wasn't only white. So for me, it's interesting to depict more complex pictures, not black, not white, but colorful.
Thank you, Victoria. And let's give the floor to Leonardo Bianchi, who somehow presented some situations around the world, but also in Italy, and also he did also some very interesting article about what was going in Russia. But anyway, I would like to ask you, as a journalist, as a researcher, as a person who is trying to say the truth, how do you deal with conspiracy theories? Can we just laugh about them, or do we have to take them seriously? And if we take them seriously, is a part that is speaking somehow to each of us, or everything is for rubbish? Leonardo.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation and for having me. Well, this is a very complicated question, but when you generally speak about conspiracy theories, you're dealing with a very complicated issue and matter. And that's my first answer is conspiracy theories have to be taken seriously, because they could have and they had very serious consequences. We just went through the 6th of January in the United States, so the storming of the Congress. We dealt with a whole lot of conspiracy theories regarding the pandemic, which of course they're still ongoing. And of course, the first reaction, the first spontaneous reaction that we all have toward conspiracy theory is to, as you said, laugh at them, because it's very easy to dismiss them as something laughable or something that it is not quite relevant in your everyday life or politics. But it's not like that at all, because conspiracy theories are a part of politics that is absolutely central, and they always have been like that. But especially in the past years, we have seen this great boost of conspiracy theories regarding, of course, the actual political situation, the pandemic, the US political situation, the European political internal situation, and of course the invasion of Ukraine. So it's not easy to dismiss them. We like all the researchers and journalists who deal with this stuff, they really wish it were something not relevant. But of course it's not. It's absolutely central in our political, cultural, and social life. So they have to be taken very, very seriously, because especially when they merge with extremism and political extremism, they could be really, really dangerous. And of course, there's also one last caveat, that is the mainstream politician and mainstream politics in general. They very cynically, they have completely normalized conspiracy theories. Of course, the main example is the most astonishing example, I would say, is Donald Trump, but the same could be applied to Bolsonaro in Brazil, or Matteo Salvini in Italy, or Giorgia Meloni in Italy, and so on. So conspiracy theories are an important part of nowadays politics, and the most concerning thing is they are completely normalized. So it is absolutely crucial to study them and to, of course, to understand what's at stake here.
Thank you, Leonardo. And Victoria, we can say that Leonardo, he didn't mention Russia in this list of crucial leaders who are using the conspiracy theory in order to empower themselves. But we know that in the rhetoric of Putin, there is a lot of stuff from these conspiracy theories, which somehow they're slightly different from the other names we have mentioned, but they are still very, very dangerous. Can you say us something more about how Putin is using conspiracy theories, and in general, how he's building up his regime's ideology and propaganda?
When I'm thinking about the subject of this talk, I thought that maybe to have a real conspiracy theories, this is a privilege, because for a real totalitarian country, of course, Russia is the real dictatorship. Putin can talk without any surety. He can talk everything. This is very brutal propaganda. Maybe this is isn't similar on the true, but what with this? People must hear it. I think that Putin all this time has only one idea. The main idea is Russia is surrounded the Western enemies. And if someone dislike my regime, this person is a foreign agent. And if a foreign agent, you can immediately, you must immediately flee the country if you in this list. And this is the end of the talk. Dislike my regime, you are a foreign agent. And please go away, or you will get 5-10 years of prisons.
Thank you, Victoria. I can appreciate your let's say, your idea of putting a line between what is theory and what it is dictatorship, which is true, but somehow Putin built up his regime also about using a very powerful gun of rhetoric that was very well presented in one part of the documentary, which is that you shoot about your work in Russia, where we saw the people in the museum, the War Museum, and they were speaking about the idea that we are a nation that never lose any battle, and we will win also in the next years. And all this part, this idea that all the others are against us and we have to fight for ourselves, is somehow part of this conspiracy theory. And Leonardo, this idea that all the others are against us is a very powerful tool for many of these rhetoric speeches. Would you like to choose one and to say us and to explain us how it is built up, and which has the real seeds that are inside this special force talk?
Well, I would choose an example of this us versus them mentality, which is absolutely a pillar of like conspiracy thoughts. And I would choose the so-called Great Replacement theory, which is a racist conspiracy theories originated in like the 70s, both in the United States and in Europe. And basically, it argues that all the migrations, all the migrants are not really migrants, but they're basically invaders poised to replace the native population, which of course are only the white and Christian populations of Europe and United States. So we have a clear distinction between us and them. Us, of course, in the mind of the proponents of the conspiracy theory, are for the whites, and of course there is also an American variant of this theory that is called the white genocide, because of course it's not only a replacement, but it's a genocide. Of course, we all know that no white genocide is occurring everywhere in the world. Of course, it's BS. So, but of course, this is a very unique conspiracy. I mean, it isn't anything new. I mean, it's very old concept of us versus them, and of course, it's very grounded in anti-Semitic conspiracies like the protocols of the elders of Zion, because of course there's always a dark and powerful elite, a great puppeteer who is pulling the strings and using these migrants to invade the countries and lower the wages of the white workers and so forth. So it's and this theory is very interesting because of course until a couple of years ago, not very long time ago, it was really restricted to a very precise ideological area, which is of course the far right, the extreme right, and the neo-fascist right. But what changed is as I was saying before, what really changed is that it has become completely normalized. So you hear mainstream politicians sprouting these absurdities about replacement, the great replacement, and white genocide and stuff. And just a couple of years ago, it was only neo-fascist in some blogs or in some forums and so forth. Now it is it has become central to our current political climate. Just to give you an example, the latest presidential campaign in France was, I wouldn't say all about the great replacement theory, but a large chunk of it was about the great replacement theory. And this was due to the candidacy of Eric Zemmour, who is basically the most rabid propagandist of this theory. And the same applies to the US and Europe and Russia too, I mean. So, and here we see I chose this example because it's this great replacement theory, because it's the perfect example of how a marginal theory can become a central, a mainstream theory. And this is due to the political use, the very cynical political use and political strategy and propaganda put forth by the mainstream politicians, who of course they know everything about this theory. They know that it's very dangerous, and of course this is a theory that is that consistently popped up in the far-right terrorist manifestos, like the Christchurch shooting or the more recent Buffalo shooting. And so they know, they perfectly know that this is a very dangerous theory. Nonetheless, they continue to use it because it serves a propaganda purpose, which is, of course, to divide us, the good, the whites, basically, the whites who empower the privileged, versus them, which are of course these supposed hordes of migrants and invaders who want to basically destroy our way of life, which of course it's not true. It's simply not true.
There is always something not true which is working with something true, which is our fear somehow, our fear of being as a privilege, I can say, to lose something of our privileges. So this reminds me what we tell in the beginning, that we don't have to laugh at this rhetoric, but we have to take it very seriously. And Victoria, you took very seriously the rhetoric of Putin's regime, and you decided to leave your country and to come in Europe very harassingly, very out of the blue, let's say, because when we met last time some years ago, it was not in your programs, in your ideas. You were very eradicated and very connected to your country, and I know from our messages that you never before thought about leaving your country, but you have to fly and come in Europe. I would like you to tell us more about your exile in Europe and how you feel that these conspiracy theories affect also your staying in Europe as a Russian.
Yes, it's a hard subject for me because before I was attacked only Putin's propaganda. I'm not in the list of foreign agent, but I have all things in my art to be in this list. So it was only a question when I will put in this list. And I was living in permanent fear when it will happen. And now I cannot return. I cannot come back to my home. And at the same time, I'm attacked sometimes on social networks, sometimes even in big media, just because I'm a Russian person. And if I'm a Russian person, something it's not good with me. Of course, if I'm Russian, I must have imperialistic idea. And if I'm Russia, maybe I don't respect Ukrainian culture, for example. Why? I don't know. But I was attacked personally in the biggest newspaper in Germany where I stayed at this moment. They especially found me that to attack. And interesting, in which country must I live at this moment? I was in collaborations with dozens and dozens European foundations, museums, galleries, publishing houses. It was during more than 10 years. And now I'm also enemy. I'm enemy in Russia, and I'm enemy here.
Yes, that's why I asked you, because it is important always to see through the mirror, not looking only from one side of the mirror, but like Alice in Wonderland, try to go through the mirror and see also the life from another side. I would like also to ask you something more about this image we are showing here, and just to explain us how you as an artist are representing your vision of reality, but at the same time you're engaged in giving voice to voiceless. Sometimes the voiceless became time by time a part of power ideology. The Orthodox believers in other Russias, and then in the last Soviet artists, they changed their position. This is a problem concerning witnessing and interpreting, which can be the border among memory and history.
At this moment on the screen, you see the drawing from my first book, Forbidden Art. It was a book about a political trial, Orthodox activist against the curator of one political contemporary exhibition. And it was several years ago. At this moment, I'm not satisfied with my work. For me, it looks like a series of cartoons. And yes, I depicted this as a very ugly group of Orthodox activists. There is a contemporary artist and we must support them. Something like this. And it's good for a political reportage, but I think it's not good if I want to be a writer, not a reporter. And at this moment, my ambition is to be a writer. And as a writer, I don't want to depict just a social group. This is a group Orthodox activists. Looks at them. Let's laugh at them, for example. I want to show each of person inside this group. And even in other Russias, I continue to show Orthodox activists, but in other Russias, it's not cartoons. It's a portrait of concrete people, of concrete persons. And there is difference between them. And each person is a complex world. And now, when many looked at me only, this is Russian, this topic to depict each person as unique world became even more important for me. I don't want to be a Russian. I want to be Victoria Lomasko, a person with very concrete life. And I want to work with each of characters of my book the same way.
Very important, Victoria, this point, which is the same, I think, that every journalist has to deal with. It is very easy as a journalist to give information if we use social groups and we use categories that are very connected with the common sense and everyone is somehow recognizing. Let's think typical how easy it's to use the national identity of a person who is doing a robbery, even if it's not so important to say it, but a lot of journalists, they're doing because they know that it's easier to arrive to the reader. And I think that in the new time of our strange way to read information, it is always more and more easy to be in this trick. So, Leonardo, you in your position, what are you thinking about this? How can you do your work as a professionist, trying to avoid this kind of odd use of social groups, categories, and simplification of situation?
Well, I mean, I guess that you have to take the hard way because, as you said, of course, it's very easy to put the blame on certain groups based on their ethnicity or nationality and stuff. It's very easy. It's the easy way. It's a shortcut, but it could work, but eventually you're not doing journalism. I mean, you're not working as a journalist, you're a propagandist. And we know that there is a very fine line between, a very thin line between propaganda and journalism. I mean, we saw that during the war, or even before the Ukraine war, and I mean there is a very thin line, and it's very easy to fall into like the propagandist category. But of course, I mean, I usually dealing with conspiracy theories, for example, you have to basically study and to be empathetic towards like your subjects, because of course it's very easy to dismiss them as some kind of fringe lunatics and some weirdos, something like that. But they actually are real people. So I always try to put like when I write, or when I'm making a video or doing a post on social media, and I'm talking about these very thorny issues, because they're very thorny and they're very difficult. I always think that I'm not like writing or speaking only for my readers, but also for my subjects. So of course, when I'm talking about really dangerous conspiracy theories, I try to understand them in order to like combat them, of course. Because when you're dealing with like the great conspiracy, the great replacement theory, as I mentioned before, you're doing basically an anti-racism and anti-fascism action. So it's very important to do that. But when you're dealing with some people who maybe who have fallen into the so-called rabbit hole, you have to be really careful, because they are people after all. So I think that journalism is also about like helping people in understanding the very chaotic reality we're all into, and we're into this reality together. So I mean, it's very easy to put the blame on others, but it doesn't pay off. What really pays off is to be empathetic toward others, even if we're not like if we're not agreeing with them, or maybe they have different political opinions or different position, different cultures and stuff. But I mean, I think that journalism is about like helping people dealing with like the mess we're into, basically.
Thank you, Leonardo. And Victoria, you told me that one of the most dangerous things you've done, it was going to Belarus and for that trial. And it reminds me that Belarus is a very bad regime, maybe worse than Putin's one. So how is there a representation of Belarus in Russia, and how Russia is perceived in Belarus? And why you, as a Russian artist, you went to Belarus to be in that trial?
Belarus is very depends on Russia. In reality, at this moment, like a part of Russia, only with other dictator. And their dictator Lukashenko is totally depends on Russian dictator Putin. And I wanted to take part in Belarusian revolutionary with several goals. The first goal, I dreamed if they will win, it can destroy Russian dictatorship too. And if they will win, my idea was I will live in Belarus. It was my concrete plan to move to Belarus if they will win. Because I wanted to continue to work with Russian language and with very known for me context, with similar problems, with people who I can understand very well. And also, the second goal, I wanted to include this material in my book, The Last Soviet Artist. What I can say about how the topic of Belarus represented, I think in Russia it just wasn't represented, isn't represented. For me, it's more interesting how this topic is represented in the West. Because in the Western media, I think only absolutely white Ukrainian people. I'm not about the government, but all nations are very good, incredibly good, amazing. And there is another nation, and Russian is absolutely monsters. And what about Belarusian people? If in these black and white pictures we put Belarusian who were on the covers European medias during 2020, and they were heroes, and also they were arrested, tortured, sexual raped. Many people were killed. And at this moment, the Belarusian people got almost the same sanction as Russians. What we can say about it? Who are heroes in this media? Why people who are struggling at this moment in Ukraine are heroes, but people who were struggling in Belarus aren't heroes? They must be punishment. Why?
This is a bigger question, a big issue about the blackmailing of sanctions, which is a theme that is on the table since 1991, since the first war in Iraq, and that period we faced the same situation, and now we know that somehow we were part of this big conspiracy, fake castle built up to make us be part of a big war in Iraq, and then discovering that the reasons they told us we were going to fight in Iraq, there were substantially a lot of false informations and at least mystification of the truth. So, Leonardo, we are going a little bit far from the conspiracy theories, but when we are speaking about betraying is a part of a very big match. And in this match, one of the players is also a part of Italian system. So we spoke about many countries. We mentioned very shortly Italy, but I would like always to put the accent also on our country.
Well, the thing to understand is, I guess, that Italy is not unique. I mean, there is no like Italian exception in the conspiracy world. That is for a very simple reason. Like, conspiracy theories are transnational by nature. They're global by nature. If a conspiracy theory pops up in the US, for example, it travels like at a lightning speed to France or Germany and Italy, of course, because there are conspiracy theories in Italy, of course. They're everywhere. So I wouldn't say that Italy is particularly prone to conspiracism thinking or mentality, but of course we have conspiracy theories too. And since we are like 2 weeks, since we have an election by 2 weeks, it's worth mentioning that there are some. I called them in one of my latest recent newsletters of my conspiracy theories newsletter. I call them like the conspiracy front. There are some small, medium parties that are formed by or guided by conspiracy theorists. And of course, we're talking about politicians here, not like some nuts or some lunatic. We're talking about politicians who have like years of political experience and media experience too. So they know very well what they're doing. And of course, they're trying to capitalize the past 2 years of anti-vaccine and let's say, restriction movement, which popped up in all over Europe and in Italy, of course. We have like Germany and France and the US and stuff. We had this kind of weird and not very hierarchic and organized movement of like people opposing the sanitary restrictions and vaccines and so forth. So they're trying to capitalize that. But even though if they won't succeed in the end, maybe just one party will go past the 3% threshold, which is in the electoral law. I don't think that. I mean, conspiracy theories are going to. They will be in the Italian parliament even without conspiracy theorists, because of course conspiracy theories are a very powerful propaganda tool, and they're as I said before, they are more and more employed by political leaders to put the blame on others and to rally their base and so forth, and of course to like create justifications for their failures, and of course also to point the finger to someone and to create scapegoats, basically. So they will, unfortunately, they're going to be with us in Italy also. But I would like to stress out that this is not like an Italian problem, of course, but it is a global problem. Italy just receives, it is like the receiving end of this global movement. And of course, the conspiracy theories are, they succeed in the end because they are able to adapt to the local context. And of course, we know that Italy too is very receptive to, I mean, a part of Italy and a part of Italian politics is very receptive to conspiracy theories.
Thank you, Leonardo. Unfortunately, we are finishing our time, but I would like to ask one last question to Victoria, having the chance to have her with us. And how can art do something for conspiracy theories? I know this is so difficult, but why are you doing art? To change the world, to leave your trace in the world. We are speaking almost to very young students, and there are very young artists also among our audience. So I would like you to say something about this.
I'm not a politician to talk something smart about conspiracy theories. I can just talk blah, 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 like an ordinary people. But as an artist, I must say, I'm in shock that at this moment, almost nobody, including artists, writers, doesn't speak about humanism. And I think if you, I, other people, your students, will just respect each person and try a little bit like this person and listen this person, we cannot make a mistake.
Okay. Thank you very much, Victoria. I would like to say goodbye to everybody, to say thank you to all the people who worked with us in recording, translating, and organizing this panel. And thank you again for being with us, and see you in the next conversation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.